My name is Emmett, and when I was only 7 years old, my life was ripped apart in the cruelest way. My parents didn't just divorce, they divided us like objects. My dad took my brother, my mom took my sister and me. I was left behind, thrown into state care like I didn't belong anywhere. For years I sat in cold foster homes, staring at doors that never opened for me, waiting for parents who never came back. But here's the truth no one tells you: abandoned children don't stay children forever. We grow up, we remember, and sometimes we come back stronger, colder, and sharper than the family that threw us away. Years later, when they all tried to return into my life, I wasn't the same innocent little girl they thought they had discarded. And what I did next is something none of them ever saw coming. I was only 7 years old when my world collapsed. Most children remember their childhood homes filled with laughter, toys scattered on the floor, or warm dinners around the table. But my memory is different. Mine is the sound of shouting, of doors slamming, of two people I called Mom and Dad ripping our family apart like we were objects to be divided. That day, my father grabbed my brother's hand, pulling him close. My mother clutched my sister, her nails digging into her tiny arm as if she was claiming her prize. And me, I stood there in the middle, a small, trembling girl, waiting for someone, anyone, to reach for me. But no one did. I remember screaming, "Please don't leave me." My voice cracked, my chest ached, but neither of them turned back. My father's eyes slid past me. My mother's face was cold. They argued over who deserved who, but when it came to me, there was silence. Silence louder than any words, and then it happened. My father walked out with my brother, my mother with my sister. And I was left standing at the door, staring at the empty hallway, abandoned. Hours later, strangers came, voices saying state care, hands leading me away from everything I knew. That was the day I learned the cruelest truth of all. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the first ones to throw you away. The first night in state care is burned into my memory like a scar. The foster home smelled of bleach and stale food, and the bed they gave me creaked every time I moved. The blanket was thin, and the pillow was flat, nothing like the warmth of the one I used to hug at home. I curled into myself, wishing someone would come tuck me in, kiss my forehead, tell me it was going to be okay. But no one came. Other kids in the house stared at me like I was an intruder. They were used to being abandoned, to rotating families, to the idea that love had an expiration date. I wasn't used to it yet. I was still clinging to the hope that maybe my mom or dad would walk through that door. Every car that drove by made my heart race, but they never came. Meals were cold, rules were strict, and affection was rare. Sometimes the foster parents tried, but it wasn't the same. Their kindness felt more like duty than love. At night, I would cry silently into my pillow, biting the sheets so no one would hear. That was where I learned a dangerous truth. If you want to survive in state care, you can't expect love. You can only expect yourself. I stopped asking questions. I stopped hoping. Each day, a little piece of the child in me died, and something harder, colder, began to grow in its place. By the time I turned 13, I had already learned what most adults take decades to understand. No one was coming to save me. If I wanted food, I had to fight for the bigger portion at dinner. If I wanted peace, I had to harden my face so no one mistook me for weak. I stopped waiting for kindness. Instead, I taught myself how to read people, their footsteps in the hallway, the way their voices shifted before they lashed out. I could tell when someone was about to snap, and I learned to disappear before the storm hit. Silence became my shield. At school, I sat alone during lunch. Friends weren't an option. Trust had become a luxury I couldn't afford. I focused on survival, grades, routines, the little things that gave me control. I remember stealing library books, hiding them under my mattress, and reading late into the night under a broken lamp. Those books became my escape, the only worlds where betrayal didn't define me, but surviving alone comes at a cost. I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. The girl staring back wasn't soft or innocent anymore. Her eyes were sharp, guarded, almost cold. One night, lying awake, I made myself a silent promise. I would never again let anyone decide my worth. I would never again beg for love that should have been freely given. That was the night's survival turned into determination. And determination slowly started turning into revenge. I thought I had buried them in my past. Years in state, care had hardened me, and I convinced myself they were gone for good. But life has a cruel way of reopening wounds you thought had healed. It started with a letter. My hands trembled as I held it, the handwriting familiar yet distant. It was from my father, cold, apologetic in a way that felt more like guilt than love. He wrote that they wanted to make things right. That phrase made me laugh out loud, bitter and hollow. How do you make right the years of abandonment? The nights I cried alone? The pieces of myself I had to stitch back together without them. Then came the visits. First my mother, pretending her absence was a mistake. She cried, but I couldn't feel anything. Her tears were salt water on stone, useless. Then my sister, older now, standing before me like a stranger, smiling as if we had just been apart for a season, not a lifetime. And the worst of all, my brother. He didn't even remember me properly. He had grown up in a different world, untouched by the pain that shaped me. They wanted dinners, reunions, forgiveness. They expected me to welcome them with open arms, as if time could erase the scars. But as I sat across from them at the table, watching them laugh and chatter like a perfect family, a fire burned in my chest. They thought they could just step back into my life. They thought I was still the broken child they abandoned. They were wrong, because this time I wasn't the same. The first confrontation didn't happen with shouting. It began in silence. I had invited them to sit down at my apartment, the air thick with unspoken history. My mother fussed with her hands, my father avoided my eyes, and my sister smiled nervously like she could charm away the years. I let them talk. They spoke of regret, of mistakes, of family, as if that word had not been burned to ash long ago. Each word felt like poison, and I swallowed it in silence until I couldn't any more. Finally, I leaned forward, my voice shaking, not with fear, but with rage that had been caged for too long. Where were you when I needed you? Where were you the nights I cried myself to sleep in a stranger's house? Where were you when I begged for love, and you gave me abandonment? The room fell silent. My father cleared his throat, muttering something about circumstances. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears, but I had learned long ago that tears could be weapons too. Then came the truth that shattered even the faintest illusion of family. They hadn't lost me, they had chosen to let me go. My father admitted it first, voice low, almost ashamed. We thought you were too much too difficult after the divorce. It was easier this way. Those words cut deeper than any blade. Easier? That was all I was worth to them. Convenience. I felt something inside me snap. The child in me had begged for answers, but the woman in me, she was ready for war. And as I stared at their guilty faces, I knew one thing for certain. Forgiveness would never be part of this story. Revenge doesn't always come in fire and fury. Sometimes it comes in silence, in carefully chosen moments that cut deeper than any blade. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, I built my revenge with patience, while they tried to pull me back into their version of family. I let them believe I was softening. I smiled at dinners, I listened to their excuses, I even let them hug me. But inside, every touch was a reminder of the years they left me untouched, unloved, unwanted. And then came the moment I had been waiting for. My mother wanted a reunion dinner, the kind where the whole family could finally heal. I agreed. The table was set, the food was warm, and for once all of them were under one roof. That's when I told my story. Not to them, but to everyone else. I had invited people from the community, neighbors, even a few colleagues. And in front of strangers I laid it all bare, the abandonment, the nights in state care, the truth my father had confessed, the betrayal that shaped me. Their faces turned pale, my father's jaw clenched, my mother's tears flowed, my sister sat frozen, their carefully crafted facade shattered in one evening. The family they wanted to rebuild turned to dust, not because I destroyed it, but because I revealed the truth they had buried. When it was over, I walked away, not broken, not abandoned, but stronger than they ever imagined. My revenge wasn't in destroying them. It was in showing them that they no longer had power over me, that I had built a life without them, and I would never need them again. I've carried this story in silence for years, and tonight I finally let it out. Not for them, but for me, because sometimes the only way to move forward is to stop protecting the people who broke you. If my story reached you, if you've ever felt betrayed, abandoned, or left behind, know this: you are not alone. And you don't have to stay silent. This is just one story, but there are so many more hidden in families, in homes, in places people never dare to speak about. On this channel, I will keep uncovering them, the pain, the betrayal, and yes, the revenge. So, if you want to hear more stories like mine, subscribe now. Hit that bell icon so you never miss the truth when it comes out. Because sometimes the darkest secrets deserve to be heard. And as their silence followed me out the door, I knew the story had finally ended on my terms.